There are great singers. There are great powerful singers. And then there are singers who can hit one note and immediately make you stop whatever you're doing. Falsetto has given R&B and soul music some of its most unforgettable voices. And that high, floating sound can somehow communicate heartbreak, romance, desperation, and pure emotion in a way that normal singing sometimes can't. And throughout the history of R&B, certain singers didn't simply use falsetto, they mastered it. These was men who could soar above harmonies of an entire group and instantly become the voice that everyone remembers. Some become international superstars, others receive the recognition that their talent deserved. But all 7 men on this list possess voices that was impossible to duplicate. Now, before we begin, this isn't simply ranking based on who could sing the highest. I'm talking about tone, control, emotion, influence, uniqueness, and how effectively each singer used falsetto to create unforgettable records. And I already know somebody's going to disagree with who I have at number 1, so just make sure to give me your list in the comments. Now, before we start, let's be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to be sure you won't miss out on any more uploads. Now, without further ado, let's cue that intro. Little Anthony possessed one of the most distinctive high voices of the doo-wop era, and his emotional delivery helped establish a blueprint that generations of R&B singers will follow. Anthony began singing during an era when vocal groups sang everywhere. Was everywhere. The competition was enormous. To survive, a group needed something that separated them from everyone else. For the Imperials, that something was Anthony's voice. The group recorded the song Tears on My Pillow in 1958, while Anthony was only a teenager. Listen to that song today. There's an innocence in his voice, but there's also a pain. That combination became incredibly powerful. Tears on My Pillow became a huge hit, and the song established the group nationally. According to the story, legendary disc jockey Alan Freed began referring to the group as Little Anthony and the Imperials, and ever since then, the name stuck. But unlike many doo-wop groups that disappeared when musical tastes changed, the group managed to reinvent themselves. During the 60s, they returned with some of their greatest recordings, with the songs on the outside going out of heartbreak songs of the era, Hurt So Bad. Now this song is where Anthony's voice really demonstrated what made him so special. He didn't simply sing high, he sounded wounded. This is one of the most important characteristics of a great falsetto singer. Technique matters, range matters, but can you make somebody feel something? Little Anthony could. When he stretched those notes, there was a vulnerability that made the lyrics believable. And remember, when this is happening, this was before the sophisticated studio sound technology that singers have today. There was no autotune, no digital correction, no endless computer editing. You had to walk in that studio and deliver. The group eventually received one of music's highest honors when they was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2009. And Anthony's influence can still be heard throughout generations that followed. The high male lead became an essential part of soul music. MOTOWN embraced it. Philadelphia Soul embraced it. The Quiet Storm embraced it. And later R&B groups, they embraced it as well. Little Anthony was there in the beginning. But at number 6, we have a singer who took falsetto somewhere completely different. A man capable of hitting notes so high that if you didn't know who was singing, you might not believe that the voice belongs to him. There are falsetto singers, and then there's Eddie Holman. If you ever heard Hey There Lonely Girl, then you understand why he's on this list. That voice almost doesn't sound real. It's delicate, high, controlled, and somehow incredibly powerful all at the same time. His musical abilities became apparent when he was young, and unlike some singers who rely almost entirely on natural ability, Holman seriously studied his craft. That training would become obvious in his vocal control. Then came the record that defined his entire career. In 1969, Holman recorded Hey There Lonely Girl. Interesting, the song wasn't originally written by him. It was originally performed by a group that was named Ruby and the Romantics, and the song was originally called Hey There Lonely Boy. But Holman, he transformed the song, and in the early 70s, the song became a massive hit. But just for a moment, forget the chart success. Listen to the performance. Holman sounds like he's floating over the record. And then he climbs even higher. The remarkable thing about Eddie Holman's falsetto is how effortless it sounds. Some singers reach high notes and you can hear them working. But with Holman, the notes seem to simply appear. His voice had almost an angelic quality, and yet he could still deliver soul. That's a difficult combination. A technically impressive voice doesn't always create emotion, but Holman, he had both. Unfortunately, Hey There Lonely Girl became so enormous that it overshadowed most of his career. But as incredible as Eddie Holman's range was, number 5 belongs to a singer whose voice helped define the sound of Motown itself. The Temptations are a group that needs no introduction. If there was a Mount Rushmore of R&B falsetto singers, Eddie Kendricks will be somewhere on it. Because for millions of people, this is what a soul falsetto sounds like. After moving to Birmingham, he became close friends with Paul Williams. That relationship eventually led them through several groups, and ultimately into what would become known as the Temptations. In the Temptations, they had an awesome lineup. David Ruffin had a gritty voice. Paul Williams had soul pouring out his voice. Melvin Franklin possessed one of the deepest bass vocals imaginable. Otis Williams helped hold everything together, and floating above these harmonies was Eddie Kendricks. His falsetto gave the Temptations another weapon. Listen to The Way You Do the Things You Do. That's Eddie. Get ready. That's Eddie again. Please Return Your Love to Me. That beautiful high lead, that's Eddie Kendricks. And then, there's Just My Imagination. That record alone could justify his placement on this list. Eddie doesn't overpower the song, he caresses it. The performance is soft, dreamy, and almost fragile, which perfectly matches the lyrics. But Eddie's story with the Temptations became difficult. By the late 60s and early 70s, tensions was growing within the group. The Temptations' sound had also changed dramatically under producer Norman Whitfield. With all the changes going on, Eddie eventually left the Temptations in 1971 and pursued a solo career. And unlike many singers who leave legendary groups, he did actually achieve major success. In 1973, Eddie Kendricks scored a hit song with Keep On Truckin'. Then came other songs such as Boogie Down, and Shoe Shine Boy. His voice survived the transition from Motown vocal group into the funkier sound of the 70s. But sadly, Eddie Kendricks passed away in 1992 at the age of 52 after battling lung cancer. His influence was enormous. Countless falsetto singers who followed was working with a blueprint that Eddie helped create. But still, we only at number 5. Because number 4 possessed something very rare, even among the greatest falsetto singers. An almost unbelievable combination of range and power. Most falsetto singers sound delicate. Philip Bailey could make falsetto sound huge. As one of the defining voices of Earth, Wind & Fire, Bailey helped create some of the most sophisticated R&B, funk, and pop music ever recorded. And his vocal chemistry with Maurice White became one of the group's defining strengths. Maurice had the warmer, earthier tenor and baritone sound. Then Philip will arrive right above him, bright, clear, and soaring. The contrast was perfect. In the early 70s, Bailey joined Earth, Wind & Fire, and once the group's classic sound came together, they became unstoppable. If Philip Bailey recorded nothing else, Reasons might still put him on this list. The studio version is beautiful, but the live performances, that's where Philip became legendary. He would take that ending and stretch it higher, longer, and more emotional. And audience, they waited for it. Somehow, Bailey could reproduce those extraordinary vocals night after night. But Reasons wasn't only the showcase. Listen to other songs like Fantasy, I've Had Enough, and I can hear the crowd like the door of an ocean as it rushes through the stream, and Head to the Sky. Throughout Earth, Wind & Fire's catalog, Bailey's upper register became one of the group's signatures. What separates Philip Bailey from many falsetto singers is strength. Falsetto can sometimes become thin as it gets higher. Bailey didn't. There was a body behind it. He could soar over the horns, percussion, bass, and a massive Earth, Wind & Fire arrangement without disappearing, and his career wasn't limited to the group. In 1984, he teamed up with Phil Collins for the song Easy Lover. Easy lover, she'll get a hold on you, believe it. The song became an international smash and introduced Bailey to an even broader pop audience. He also recorded gospel music and demonstrated that his abilities extended far beyond funk, and unlike several other singers on his list, whose career was cut tragically short, Philip Bailey has had the opportunity to spend decades demonstrating his gift. But number 3 is where this ranking becomes really difficult because the next singer had one of the most haunted falsettos in R&B history. The DeBarge family produced an unbelievable amount of musical talent. The family was filled with singers, but before DeBarge became stars, there was Bobby DeBarge, and Bobby possessed a falsetto that could be absolutely breathtaking. Bobby became best known as the lead singer of the group Switch. When Bobby opened up his mouth, you knew who the lead singer was. Listen to There Never is a masterclass in falsetto singing. Bobby's voice sounds fragile and powerful all at the same time. He could slide into high notes instead of attacking them. There was pain in his tone, a vulnerability, and an almost eerie beauty. And then there's the song, I'll Call Your Name. For many R&B fans, this is Bobby DeBarge at his finest.
I call your name, girl.
voice floats over the arrangement, delivering the kind of performance that would influence an entire generation of singers. Unfortunately, Bobby's life away from music was deeply troubled. He struggled with drug addiction and experienced serious personal and legal problems, which disrupted his career. His relationship with his family was complicated as well, shaped in part by the physical and sexual abuse and the dysfunction of the DeBarge children that they are experienced growing up. But when Switch eventually fell apart, Bobby's career was on the decline. His younger siblings became stars with the group DeBarge. Now imagine watching a musical style that you helped pioneer becoming enormously successful through your younger brothers and sisters. All of this is happening while your own life was unraveling. Bobby never experienced a long-term career that his talent suggested was possible, because sadly, he passed away from AIDS at the age of 39. And his passing made his recordings even more haunting. Because when you hear Bobby DeBarge today, you hear an enormous potential. A singer who had the instrument to become one of R&B's greats. For listeners who know Switch, he already is. That's why Bobby DeBarge sits at number 3. But number 2 belongs to one of the most important voices in the entire history of MOTOWN. Before MOTOWN became MOTOWN, there was Smokey Robinson, who was a singer, songwriter, producer, executive, and owner of one of the smoothest voices in popular music. Smokey's falsetto wasn't about vocal gymnastics. It was about intimacy. When Smokey sang, it could feel like he was just standing just 2 feet away, telling you something he didn't want nobody else to hear. As the lead singer of the Miracles, Smokey became one of the first major stars of Berry Gordy's growing MOTOWN empire. And then came the songs, You Really Gotta Be Baby, the tracks of My Tears,
Fiction. This is no act. This is real. It's a fact.
and The Tears of a Clown.
I need to know. I'm hurt and I want you to know.
That would have been an extraordinary catalog if only Smokey had been a singer, but he was also writing, not only for himself, but he wrote or co-wrote songs for other MOTOWN artists, including The Temptations, Mary Wells, and Marvin Gaye. He gave The Temptations My Girl. One of the most famous songs in R&B history came from Smokey Robinson's pen. That's a genius of Smokey Robinson. He made difficult singing sound easy. And his tone was so distinctive that nobody could convincingly imitate him without immediately sounding like they was trying to imitate Smokey Robinson. His influence reaches far beyond generations, and unlike many artists from MOTOWN's original generation, he successfully transcended into a solo career, with songs like Cruisers could be made relevant long after the Miracles. Smokey Robinson could easily be number 1 on this list. Hell, Eddie Kendricks could have been number 1, or Philip Bailey. But that's the problem with ranking singers at this level. But for this list, there's one man left, and he's probably the most overlooked singer of all 7. Coming at the number 1 spot is Ron Banks, and I already know what some people are thinking. Ron Banks over Smokey Robinson, over Eddie Kendricks, over Philip Bailey, and the answer is yes. And here's why. When we're talking specifically about falsetto, Ron Banks possessed one of the most beautiful, emotional, and instantly recognizable voices in R&B history. Yet, somehow his name still doesn't receive the recognition it deserves. He became a founding member of the Dramatics, a group that would eventually become one of the greatest vocal groups to emerge from Detroit outside of the MOTOWN machine. In the Dramatics, they had something special. They had multiple lead singers, different voices that could step forward depending on what the song required. But when Ron Banks went into that falsetto, there was nothing else quite like it. The Dramatics went on to build a catalog that was filled with soul classics. And behind most of that classics was the voice of Ron Banks on songs such as Me and Mrs. Jones,
And sugar, I'll go my way. Tomorrow with me, the same place, the same.
You're the Best Thing in My Life,
It was harmony. Yes, your music to my heart.
Toast to the Fool, Fell for You,
Oh, we're on a highway to heaven. This time, rolling.
Throughout their recordings, Ron Banks' high voice became one of the group's defining ingredients. What made Ron special wasn't simply range. His falsetto had character. There was a slight ache in it. He could sound romantic, desperate, tender, or completely heartbroken. And because the Dramatics had other powerful singers around him, his falsetto became even more effective. That's the beauty of a great vocal group, was contrast. A deeper voice established the foundation. Then suddenly, Ron Banks entered above everyone, and the entire emotional temperature of the song changes. Ron also became an important songwriter and creative force within the Dramatics. He wasn't simply the guy that was brought forward to hit the high notes. He helped shape the group's identity and remained connected to the Dramatics for decades. But here's why I believe Ron Banks deserves the #1 position. His falsetto sounds like nobody else. Ron Banks had the combination of tone, pain, soul, and uniqueness. All of these traits makes a singer instantly recognizable. Sometimes that's all you need. Unfortunately, Ron Banks passed away on March 4th, 2010 at the age of 58 after suffering a heart attack. His passing didn't receive the massive mainstream attention that followed some other R&B legends. And in a way, this reflects the frustrating story of the Dramatics themselves. They made classic records, they had unforgettable voices, they influenced generations, but they never received quite the same historical recognition as groups like the Temptations or the Four Tops. And that needs to change. Because when we're talking about the greatest falsetto singers in R&B history, Ron Banks deserves to be part of that conversation. And that's why, for me, he's #1. But here's the important thing. Falsetto isn't simply about singing high. If that was the case, this list would be easy. The greatest singers understand that a high note means absolutely nothing if the listener doesn't feel nothing. That's what separates these 7 men. They didn't just reach high notes. They made those notes mean something. Now, I want to hear from you. Who is the greatest falsetto singer of all time? Drop your top 7 in the comments below. And don't just give me #1. I want the whole list. Because if there's one thing that R&B fans love more than great singers, it's arguing about who can sing the best.